So we're going to do Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis at the Mishnah. That's what I was working on. I thought we were at Lamed Aleph. So the Mishnah says Shnaim shekitzu shnei noshim, two people that were kaddish. These are essentially two brothers that in the Gemara later in one tzad, the Gemara is going to say that these are twin brothers. So there's two brothers that married two sisters. Shnayim shekitzu shtei noshim, ubishas knisasa lechupa hechlifu eshel zeh lozeh, eshel zeh lozeh, and then at the chuppah or after chuppah they got switched. The language of the Gemara is hechlifu. They switched the wives, and they said, "You take that one, I'll take this one." But the Gemara is going to say no. That the Gemara wouldn't say, the Mishnah wouldn't use a case of Rishayim if there was no need to, and so therefore it says by mistake. Mistake happened, and Rachel and Leah got switched out after chuppah. Harei elu chayavim mishum. So we're going to have chiyuvin on multiple accounts. Mishum eshes ish. There's going to be chiyuv number one because of eshes ish. V'im hayu achim, and if they were brothers, mishum eshes ach, because not only is this wife his brother, a married woman to someone else, but she's also his brother's wife. V'im hayu achoyis, and if these two women are sisters, mishum isha lachaysa, because it's also his wife's sister. And if they were also tamei, mishum nida. So you're going to have 4 isurim. So the Gemara is going to deal with really the sugya that we were talking about before in the previous dafin of isur chalal isur. Over here we have a case where you have an isur. There was an isur already beforehand. Whichever brother did the kiddushin first already created an isser in this woman as an eshes ish, and the brother would be also because eshes ach, and then when he marries, it's also achos isha. So there would be the second isser of when he married. The achos isha takes effect. That's an isser chalal isser. So the Gemara is going to ask, why do we say that an isser chalal isser over here? Must be the reason is because it's an isser moisif, there's an isser kollel. Well, we'll have to see. Is it there is a isser moisif for the nida and isser kollel for the achos isha, right? So there's isser kollel. And then the nida would create a isser kollel. Now,
could you define those terms, isser kollel and isser mosif?
So in isser chalal isser, we say that really once something is already usser, a new Torah isser is not going to take effect on this thing unless there's another, a broader way for this isser to take effect. Actually, there are 3 things the Gemara says. It could be when they are chal bevasachas, when they take effect at once, which would be the case of over here where brother A married first. So at the same time that the woman, the wife, becomes an eshes ish, a married woman, she also becomes his brother's wife. So there's a double isser upon the brother of the groom, the brother of the chassan, on account of 2 things. There's an isser because just like any other person in the world, this is a married woman. And then additionally, because it's his brother. So you have the isser of the brother as well as the isser of eshes ach. But those happen simultaneously, b'vasachas, and so isser chalal isser, in the previous daf had a machlekes whether Rebbe said this or not. Each one took a shavua, right, of whether or not that was the opinion of Rebbe. But there is an isser that Rebbe said that there is a concept that bevas achas isur chalal isur, two isurim that happen simultaneously would take effect. And the Gemara at the top of Lamed Daled Amud Aleph also discusses in the case of Shabbos and Yom Kippur, which become an obligation at the same time. So the Isser of Shabbos and the Isser of Yom Kippur would take effect at once.
For Isser Basachas, like it seems like there is an opinion that there is some opinion out there that Basachas wouldn't be called both at the same time. Like I didn't research it, but I was wondering how would such a system work? If you would have two Isser in their call at the exact same time, how would you decide which Isser mechanically, like which one gets in? Right? It does seem like there is such a daya in the Gemara.
Right. So what would define which one is chal?
Maybe like flip a coin, like.
No. It would seem like that the one that's a stronger or the bigger Isser.
More chomer?
The more chomer Isser, the one that's the broader Isser. So now let's take it to Isser Kollel. Isser Kollel is where the Isser is more broadly applicable. That means in this case you had the Isser of Achos Isha. It is not only on this brother that this is on this woman that there's an Achos Isha, the sister of my wife, because as soon as the second brother marries the sister of this first woman, so again, Reuven marries Rachel. And Reuven, when he married Rachel, there was an Isser of she's a married woman, Eshes Ish, and also to Shimon, there's an Isser of Eshes Ach, his brother's wife. Then when Shimon marries Leah, Rachel's sister, so now Rachel has a third prohibition. It's also Leah's sister, his wife, Shimon's wife's sister. But that's adding an Isser to an already Usser woman. However, but since the Isser is Kollel, it is broader than just this one sister. It would take effect to any sister that she had. Since it affects the 5 other sisters she has, it also affects this one sister. That's Isser Kollel. So when it's a broader Isser, when it will take effect to more things than just this thing alone, so then it would apply as an Isser Kollel. Since it takes effect for sister 3, 4, and 5, it also takes effect for sister 2. That's the concept. So when Shimon marries Leah, not only is Rachel an Achos Isha, but it's also Bilhah and Zilpah are Achos Isha. So since all these sisters become Usser, it'll equally, it's Chal. In other words, this prohibition, this Isser has to be Chal. It has to have a place to settle, to take effect. It's an effective Isser because it takes effect on Bilhah and Zilpah. So since it already took effect, it was Chal on Bilhah and on Zilpah, it's also going to be Chal on Rachel. That's the concept, Joaquin, of Isser Kollel. Isser Moisif is where the new prohibition is a greater prohibition in the Isser itself. So let's say we have an Isser Achila. Okay? So there's an Isser Achila of Chodesh. Okay, matzah. I made matzah before Pesach. I have chametz before Pesach. Chametz before Pesach made of new grains in Eretz Yisrael are going to be usher as chadash. I'm not allowed to eat it because I didn't yet have the new wheat. Now Pesach comes, I say, I have a way for the isser of chametz not to take effect. It won't take effect because I made my chametz with new wheat, with chadash wheat, and so the isser of Pesach chametz will never take effect because it's a isser halal isser. So there's an isser meisif. Sorry. Well, right. But the idea is that the isser will take effect because the isser of chametz has a greater prohibition. It's also bahana. So there's if the isser becomes more expansive, not broader to different people, but it has more prohibition itself, then it would take then there's an isser meisif. Okay, that's the concept of Issa Moisef, Issa Kollel, good. What's going to be unique, and if we get a chance to talk about in this week's Daf, is that actually these cases are each party has their own Isser. So normally the way we say Isser Moisef, if I would say it in terms of the first level, the way we talk about it in the yeshiva is, one is on the Isser Gavra, and one is the Isser Chefza. If the Chefza itself, the item that becomes, that is Aser, now becomes more Aser, so that would be an Isser Moisef. I've just added to the Isser of eating this bread, an Isser to even benefit from the bread. The Isser Anah of the bread. So that's even one step more, a greater Isser. So then it's going to take effect at Isser Moisef, Isser Chalal Isser. And what would we say Isser Kollel? That now more people have a prohibition. The same not allowed to eat this bread now affects more broadly. So let's say it's teruma, and as a Yisrael may not eat teruma anyhow, it's chametz of teruma. And now Pesach comes, even the kohen may not eat it. So that's not a greater isser of the chametz, but it's more broadly an isser, right? Because to the Yisrael, he can't be nana from teruma anyhow. He can't be he's not allowed to eat teruma or benefit from teruma before Pesach. And now that chametz comes, it didn't become more usher to him, but it's more kollel because it now more people have that isser. But over here in our case, really, if you're looking at Reuven and Shimon, then Reuven's wife Rachel is the cheftza shel isser, right? The item of isser, and there's a broader isser to him because she is now also usher to other sisters also apply. But if you're looking from Rachel's perspective, from her, she also has an isser, and the item of isser switches, and Reuven is the item of isser from her perspective. So why is she the Issa Kollel? Why is one an Issa Kollel or Issa Moisef? That we're going to have to see if we get to it. I want to address the Gemara on Lamed Gimel Amud Beis. So let's start the Gemara. Another 3 lines in the Mishnah. Now, so that they realized their mistake, and they want to go back to the way it was supposed to be. We have to wait 3 months. Why do you have to wait 3 months? Perhaps they had become pregnant, and Rashi says, "Ubenehem mamzerim," and the children would be a mamzer. And we need to distinguish or differentiate between zera kosher and zera pasal, whether this is these children are kosher or not. So that they would know whether where this pregnancy is from. Now, the truth is that there's a concept of havchana even without zera kosher, just to know whether they're pregnant b'chalal, to know who the father is, so they know who the siblings are. So you have to know whether or not there's a chitun, right? Whether there's psul or not, you need it. And we see later in the Gemara, we'll see in a few daf in about a month, that there is such a concept of havchana, of separating for 3 months in general. Also, if there is such a thing as an isser of muberes chavera, that not to marry someone who is pregnant from a previous marriage. So this would be a muberes chavera that should also be an isser. Why did Rashi need this particular havchana? It's to say that there was an isser, and to recognize whether this is kosher or not. Really, it applies anyhow. Some want to bring a raya from here that the isser of of the Isser of Mu'beres Chavera is only if there was an Isser in the marriage. And here there's no Isser in the marriage. In any case, Ve'imoyu Kahanes Nifsalu Min HaTruma. And if they are Kahanim, Ve'imoyu Katanes, She'inu Ruyus Leila, Machzir Nosem Miyad. And if they're minors, in this case, they would not be able to become pregnant anyhow, and so therefore there's no chashash, so they can go back right away. Or the imay kahanis, and if there was they were kahanis, which even in ba'inus, even though it was a mistake, or to be aser nifsalu min truma, they do become possible from truma because they cannot go back to the kahanim marriage. So the Gemara now challenges: is this really true that the wording of the Mishnah is hichlifu? They did so seemingly intentionally. Hichlifu midi b'Rashi. Would the Mishnah really pick a case of Rishoim? Now, it could be such a case, but why would the Mishnah teach us the halacha? Because the halachas are necessary, and even if it was a mistake. So teach it to us in a case that is not Rishoim, that they didn't do so intentionally. So midi b'Rashi askinan. And besides, it doesn't really make sense. The rest of the Mishnah seems to be going only if it was done by mistake. So we'll bring the brayas from the Mishnah, but the brisa is going to be the raya from Rabbi Chia. We have 16 chatases are going to be brought here. There are 4 people. Each one of them has 4 different isurim, like the Mishnah enumerates: married woman, brother's wife, sister's wife of sister of wife, anida. So there are 4 chatas and 4 people that have to bring that chatas. Now, chatas is only brought if it was done by b'shegeg. If they did so intentionally, that would be b'mezid. B'mezid mi'ika carbon. But if it was b'mezid, is there even a carbon? So the fact that we talk about a carbon tells us that we're talking about something that is that was by mistake. So why does the Mishnah say the term of hichlifu? The word that the Mishnah seems to say that they purposefully swapped out the wives. Amar of Yehuda tani huchlafu. Right, the correct text is not hichlifu, but huchlafu. By mistake, they brought home the wrong sister. And it's logical in our Mishnah that we're going to have to say that. The Ketani Seifa, because it says at the end of the Mishnah, if they were minors, then they go back. Now, if it was done intentionally, do they go back? And the halacha is that Ashes Ish, that intentionally broke her marriage with a different person, with a different man, is going to be Aser Lachza Labalas, Aser to go back to her husband. So if it was done intentionally, then for sure it would be Aser. So this that we say, that they go back either after 3 months or immediately if it's a child, if it was a minor, tells you that we're not talking about a mazid, we're talking about a shayid. The one says actually from the katana itself, from the minor, it's not a question. That even if the minor did it intentionally, but a minor is pitu katana, that is seduction of a minor. It's a statutory thing that's going to count as an einus. It's going to count as against their will, even though that the child did it with their knowledge and their want, but as a minor, it counts as einus. V'einus b'Yisrael mishra shari, and therefore she could go back because the einus doesn't count and it's mutter labala. Ela l'ktani mafrishin asher shel but rather it's from the first part, from the adult, from the gadol, where it says that you separated for 3 months and to see whether she became pregnant or not. And then, but after 3 months, you could go back, right? Then you go back. The Yevomos Mishari, and if it's amazing, you can't go back. So it's a good proof that huchlafu can go back. This idea of pitui ketana oinesu, there's a lot of talk, and I want to address this because this is a famous Rambam and a question of what the reasoning of the Rambam is, and really what the reasoning, the Rambam's statement really brings up this whole question and reasoning and understanding of what's the basis of this klal of pitui ketana oinesu, of the seduction of a minor counts as oines, counts as against our will. So the Rambam says that even a minor who broke a marriage with a husband, a married minor, halachically a Torah married minor, who breaks that marriage with another man, is prohibited to go back to her husband if it was done intentionally, if it was done willingly. Now, the Ravid right there on the spot says, what are you talking about? The Gemara in Daf Lamed Gimel in Yevomos says, Pitui ketana oinesu, that the seduction of a minor, meaning even if they did so willingly, but that count because they're a minor, it doesn't count. So what are you talking about? It says clearly in our Gemara that they would go back. They go back even though it was done willingly. So a lot has been said to try and understand and prove where did the Rambam see that this halacha does not to go against what seemingly is in this Gemara clear, that when a minor is seduced even willingly as a married woman, that they could go back because pitui ketana oinesu, it counts as an oines, it counts as involuntary action. So the Reb Kiva Eger already points out that this concept here of pitui ketana oines really is related to the Tosfos in Ksubas Daf Tes. In Ksubas Daf Tes, with the sugya of svek sveka, there's a double doubt in knowing whether a woman was, when the married man comes and says, I think that this woman was not a basula, was with someone before, and so we have a double doubt. And the Gemara says a svek sveka over there. And the question is, what is the svek sveka? Maybe it was done willingly, maybe not. And even if it was done willingly, maybe it happened before the marriage. And the Gemara says, well, that there would be a limit if it was a minor, so then you wouldn't have the svek sveka. And Tosfos says, well, you still have a svek sveka. And because pitui ketana oines, Tosfos says, since pitui ketana oines, so really counts as one question. Was it done willingly or unwillingly? And the minor counts as not willingly. But if you say that the minor count, like the Rambam, so the Rambam based on Tosfos' question, seems to learn that Gemara would be the basis to argue with this Gemara. That's what the Kesef Mishnah and the Mishnah Melech and the Maggid Mishnah, over there offer as the explanation. So basically, this Rambam is a very problematic Rambam, and we'd have to explain the Gemara in Ksubas, which is not our discussion. We'd have to explain the Gemara in Ksubas as not holding of this halacha here, even though Tosfos has a different answer. And the Chassam Sofer says it's very hard to say that because of Tosfos' question, which Tosfos has another answer for, therefore the Rambam chose to ignore an explicit, clear Gemara here, and address and assume that the Gemara is over there in Ksubas is arguing with our Gemara, because it's not in the Gemara there explicitly. It was just based on Tosfos' question. We have to explain that pitui ketana counts as an equal oines to regular oines, and it's just one single suffix. And he doesn't like, and the Rambam wouldn't like Tosfos' answer, and therefore must hold that pitui ketana is not pitui ketana. The seduction of a minor does not count as an oines. Some Sofer says that you wouldn't take that type of three-step explanation of a Gemara to explain the Gemara that way, which could have other answers, like Tosfos does have other answers, and then say and use that explicitly against our Gemara. basically the Gemara over there is creating trying to create scenarios where it wouldn't be a svek sveka, and Tosfos says it would be a svek sveka on a minor in any case, because maybe it was ba'enis, maybe it was baratzon, and even if it was baratzon, maybe she wasn't a minor, maybe she was still a ketana. So it happened beforehand. To which Tosfos says no, that wouldn't count as two svekas. That's still one suffix because pitui ketana einis. So shame einis chad. Whether done as a minor willingly or as an adult against their will, that's all the same. That's Tosfos's answer. But the question was that it should really be a svek svek when the Gemara is trying to make it a one suffix. In any case, so the Chassam Sofer really addresses a question that comes up. Why is this concept any different than any other where the Torah says? This is the only time the Torah says we have a rule that we say, even if you did it willingly, but since you're a minor, it counts as if you did it unwillingly. Really, every time we have this klal that ain't ancient, katanim lav bar ancient. Minors are not held responsible for their actions. Right? There's no ancient. So this seems to be within the same thing. Why is it any different? So the Shoyal and the Chassam Sofer wanted to say, this is a Tshuva Chassam Sofer where he responds to the question, and the Shoyal wanted to say that, you know what, it's actually two different things. That there's when somebody does something as an action, so they're not held responsible, so they're la bar einshin. You're not going to punish them, but their action counts as theirs. And over here, this counts that it's not even their action, because really they would want to do it. There's a certain desire, and then he says no. There's no desire. The Shoyal says there's no desire, as the Gemara says that in the halacha of yichud, that who is a good shomer for yichud? What counts as a valid shomer in yichud is someone who is young enough that they don't have a desire, but old enough that they understand what's appropriate and inappropriate. So that's the level that somebody's going to not want to do something inappropriate. So you see that actually a minor of who has some sense of self and dignity is actually not doesn't necessarily have a pitui in a sense of seduction and desire. So Chassam Sofer disagrees with this whole concept. He says actually the concept of pitui ketana einis and lav bar einshin are really one and the same, that they are one concept. When a minor does something, they're not held responsible for their actions. But it doesn't mean that they don't know what they're doing. It doesn't mean when an 8-year-old walks into a shop, make sure no one's looking, right? The shopkeeper is now looking and steals a candy. That doesn't mean they don't know what they're doing. It means you can't hold them responsible for what they're doing. But they have a certain sense of that it's the wrong thing to do, but their desires and their self-control and their concepts of right and wrong and their sense of boundaries, those are things that they don't have yet. So they're not held responsible for it. This is really the same halacha that lav bar einshin, that a minor is not a bar einshin, is the same concept of that we have in regards to pitui katanas einis. It doesn't mean that it actually is einis, but we treat it as einis. We treat it as einis. And normally, when we talk about the responsibility for an action, the punishment is only the punishment for the action. But in regards to marriage, it affects someone else, and therefore we have to change the language, and not just we're not going to punish or hold the child accountable. but rather we're going to say we're going to hold the adult accountable because they are the one that could have, should have known better. And it's their responsibility that this is going to be accounted to. So that's why the change in language, that's what Chassam Sofer says, the language is really, is because of the circumstance of what we're talking about, that someone else is involved and that person should have known better and could know better and is the one that instigated it. So therefore, they're held responsible. Also, because it affects not only the minor, but it also affects if she's married her husband, her halachic husband. So therefore, the change in wording. So the Chassam Sofer says that really, this concept of pitu ketana is really the same klal as lav barinchin. Ketana malav barinchin. They're not held responsible. You can't punish the minor halachically for a misdeed. But based on that, he says, we understand that lav barinchin does not mean that they didn't know what they were doing. Only we're not going to hold them responsible for what they did. So we actually have that a concept that a person can be held responsible, not held responsible, but the action they're doing, they understand what they're doing. So the betrayal to the marriage is still there. And that's with by Saita, the Torah says, by Saita, by a wayward woman, a woman that's breaking the trust of the marriage. The Torah calls it limol mal, to misuse, to breach, to a me'ila, be'isha, in her husband. So that applies even in such a case. Even for a minor, the knowledge and understanding that she's in a marriage, even though she doesn't understand the strength of that and the importance of that, the Rambam is going to hold that klapi, holding her responsible, of course, pituk tana inasu. And the Gemara is only referring to that. We're not holding her responsible, but as far as the breaking of the marriage, it's broken. It's broken because there was a me'ila, because there was an intentional me'ila in the husband. So why over here does the Gemara say that pituk tana inasu, that if it was done intentionally, that it would not be, she would be allowed to go back to her husband because she's a minor. So that seems not like the Rambam. So the answer, Chassam Sofer says, is, of course, in this case, we're talking about that the husband was in it on it as well. Huchlifu, this isn't the thought that the Gemara means hichlifu, that they decided, all four decided to swap. So you can't say that she is held responsible for at least for the me'ila in the marriage. She didn't do the me'ila in the marriage any more than him. So that's not a me'ila in the husband. That's not a breaking of the trust of the marriage. There's no me'ila v'timama. Right? So in the Shaka V'Tari, the Gemara is saying, how do I know that it was that it was done unintentionally? Maybe it was done intentionally. And in that level, it was done intentionally, meaning all four people said, you know what, let's switch. And then the Gemara says, well, then she would be usher. The Gemara says, no, pituk tana einasu. And that's why she's allowed to go back. So we said, wait, but the Rambam says that you can't go back. Yeah, that's when only she was intentional and he knew nothing about it. So therefore, she was mayel in her husband. The me'ila was still there, even though that she's a katana, she's a minor and not held responsible. But the marriage is broken. The me'ila in the marriage happened because it was done in her level intentionally. She knew what she was doing. She's not held responsible for what she was doing because she's so minor. Whereas over here in our Gemara, you can't say that she was me'ila in the husband because he, as much as she, were in this.